Hi everyone, welcome back to the 13th session of Local Supporting Locals. I can't believe it, how much time we've been actually hanging out with you all and sharing with you all the knowledge and expertise bouncing around in Tauranga. So welcome. While you're watching this in the replay, please make sure you comment below letting us know that you're watching it. That would be awesome. I'm here with Valerie and Tony as usual, but we have a very special guest and I'm very excited to have Mark here. Mark Greaves is the Chief Operations Officer. I hope I'm getting this right. Otherwise, I'm just making this up. But from once, who wants it. But Mark's got a really vast, this is what I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. You've got a really vast experience in retail, from being on the shop, like starting off on the shop floor, to going into management for, big change across multiple different countries, to now being, I keep saying Onset is the biggest e-commerce store in New Zealand, but I might be making this up. Is Onset the biggest e-commerce store?
Not quite the biggest, that certainly would be nice. We see ourselves as a premium online fashion retailer, but offering our customer exceptional value.
Yeah, so it's really awesome. What I love about your journey is you've gone from really traditional businesses and retail business models to this entrepreneurial world of let's do everything online. So thank you so much, Mark, for coming and joining us. Let's get straight into it. Like, this is going to be a little bit of a conversation, but what I would love to know first up is, what's COVID like been for retail and for you guys?
Look, COVID has forced, I think, everybody, but in particular retailers, to have a look at their business and work out what is sustainable moving forward, and has really put into the forefront, if it wasn't already, the world of e-commerce. Unfortunately, COVID forced most retailers to close their doors, and the cost of doing business continued to accrue. And luckily, the government launched essential goods relatively early on, which was a lifesaver for us, being able to reopen and sell certain goods to customers and get them delivered in a contactless way. And a lot of retailers were able to take advantage of that to make some money. But even post a reopening at level 3 and level 2, retailers are seeing that their e-commerce business continues to grow at exceptional rates, and they're having to think about changing their business models to support that. That doesn't mean retail's dead. Retail and bricks and mortar stores are going to continue to be a core component of retail, but it's just about how you make those more relevant moving forward. Interesting, before I was at Onset, I spent nearly 5 years at the Briscoe Group in a supply chain role there. One of the things that I think they did really well, and you'll see more of, is going, how do the retail stores support fulfilling orders for customers, things like click and collect, but also sending orders. The traditional model of just having a DC sending orders to customers may no longer be relevant, and it might be about how do you have all your stores sending customers their orders. I think the other thing that COVID is doing is, and it's great, the name of this group, is bringing things back local. At the moment, it's taking 18 to 25 business days to get something sent from Australia to New Zealand. So the world that we knew pre-COVID, when everything was close and you could get something from the other side of the world to someone in a couple of days, it's just no longer there. And I don't know if it'll come back, or if it does, it'll certainly come back in a different way. So being able to supply things locally, and customers being able to understand that they are actually going to get their goods in a timely manner, is really important. And I think one of the things that Onset does really well, and we try to do well, is part of our business model and how we can offer exceptional value is we don't always have the stock on hand. But we make sure we're really clear with customers about when we're likely to be able to send that order to them. And I think being able to be clear, if you've got the stock locally in Tauranga and you can send it the same day and the customer will get it tomorrow, being able to be clear on that's really important, because that's value to the customer.
It frustrates the hell out of me when I go through the whole checkout process only for them to tell me it's going to be delivered in a month's time. oh my
Yeah.
God, like, it's like I've just spent all this time to try to solve a problem, and the problem's not, you know, a month, the solution is a month away. So,
But each customer makes a different decision. For some customer, they're happy to wait a month if they're getting exceptional value and they can see that they're getting that value. So it's all about what's important to each customer, and they can giving them the information to make that decision.
so in regards to buying decisions, that's a good subject to be in. Do you find the buying decision of what people want to buy, or, you know, what they are buying e-commerce versus maybe like in person, has that changed at all? Do you think the landscape changed of how we buy?
I think it's constantly changing, and I think as a retailer, it's one of the things that we have to keep constantly close to and understand our customer and why they're purchasing. Even if I look at myself personally, you know, coming out of COVID, I've got a 2-year-old daughter. You know, she was growing out of clothes and shoes. I couldn't afford to wait for some things online, and you know, we did go back into physical bricks and mortar because, you know, I wanted to make sure I got her the right shoes for daycare and they fit. So those things are really important, and you know, taking it to an e-commerce world, it's about how you give that consumer confidence that it is the right size. You know, and things like good sizing guides, consistency in sizing by cross brands are all really important when you're selling remotely, but also the customer having confidence that they can return it if it is wrong.
So,
Mark, I've got a question.
Oh, you go, Valerie.
Yeah, I've got a question around delivery side of things, because it sounds like, you know, it's a little bit the analogy of new subdivision, right? So we've got new subdivision, so many houses, but the roading is not there. So in e-commerce side of things, we've got this amazing stores online. But what about the delivery side of things? Do you think it's a little bit of a bottleneck for you, or our postal services are actually working really well? And if it is an issue, what are the solutions in the pipeline? Maybe there are some solutions already.
So the last 6 weeks has certainly been a bottleneck. The courier businesses across New Zealand, and I talk to a number of them on a relatively regular basis, have had exceptional volume, bigger than they've ever had in the past, and they've been trying to work in a different way with contactless delivery, trying to limit the number of team members in their depots. So they've had some real challenges around that. However, I think we're getting back to pre-COVID delivery standards. Most things delivering next day, if it's a local delivery or sort of within an area, in a couple of days down to the South Island. I do think we're going to see the courier businesses look at changing some of their models. And again, it's going to come down to what you're willing to pay for. I think, you know, if you want speedy delivery, it's there, but it's going to cost money. If you're willing to wait a couple of days, you know, even next day, there'll be different pricing scales within that. And again, it's about giving that consumer the choice.
Yeah.
I also think as e-commerce continues to grow, the delivery guys will get some efficiencies out of it. If you look at the traditional courier model of 10 years ago, they were going into a business, picking up some parcels and dropping off 10 parcels. What e-commerce has done and the business consumer delivery model has done is now they're suddenly going to one house and dropping one parcel. So it's fundamentally changed their model. And I think as e-commerce grows though, suddenly they won't be going to that one house to drop one parcel off. They'll be consolidating and dropping 3 or 4. And that will again change their model. So I think it's something we as retailers have to keep close to our delivery companies, work with them in a partnership. I always believe that partnership's really important in this space. You know, they are in delivery of your customer mile. Your customer sees them as part of you. So it's worth, you know, working with them and having good open relationships with them.
Yeah, for sure. And another question I had around the stock levels, you know how you've mentioned that sometimes the stock is a few days away, a few weeks away. So is there kind of a number of days where customer 100% will back out of the deal? So is it 30 days? You know, have you observed the behavior out there of some sort?
I think it varies by customer. It's all about what does the customer's need or want. and what is the value equation that you're delivering. You know, if you're not delivering value and you're putting it out a long time, no, they're not going to purchase. But if you're delivering value and they don't need it urgently, then they are willing to wait. But each customer is different, and they're different for the same product. So it's, you know, it's about offering that value, and delivery time is part of that value equation that a customer will look at.
And with regard to stock management level and stock management overall, so if we were to mention some kind of, so how do you manage your stock? Do you have a software, your preferred software, just coming from the accounting side of things? What's your inventory and stock level management system?
Look, I think most retailers, and we're no different, have warehouse management systems, stock management systems. Some of them, like ours, are custom built to suit our business. Some are buying off the shelf. There's more off the shelf systems out there, particularly, you know, cloud-based systems now. It's about finding something that suits your business model and works well for your business model. And there's still a place even for Excel to manipulate data and sales and your stock levels.
Yeah, I guess for small businesses, it's just to sum it up, and Pauline, I'll go to you. Yeah, to sum it up, just for small businesses, it's actually quite crucial to manage the stock, and whichever way they'll go, it's either custom build or off the shelf or a spreadsheet, which quite a tedious work. But yeah, you've got to make sure that you know what's in stock and all of that. But that's thank you for that, Mark. And
I think it's just as important to know what's not in stock. Because if you can't sell what you don't have available. So if you know, understanding your out of stocks or out of availables is really important.
So Mark, just on that point and your point before around retailers having to evolve and change, do you think that retail, or in the bricks and mortar sense, will become more showrooms where they'll be more aligned with e-commerce and click and order in store and holding less stock?
I think the jury's out on that a little bit. I think if what we'll see, and we're seeing it now, and we'll see a continued growth on this, is customers using their mobile devices while they're in retail stores to make sure that they are getting the right value. But if you can convince that customer that buying it off you today is the right value, they will still buy it in store. And I think we've got to be careful as retailers and stores not to carry our stock levels too low, and that then when they come to buy, it's not available, you are just somewhere else.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting equation to that balancing act with demand and supply. Huh?
Yeah, and that's why I think being able to use that stock to fulfill e-commerce orders as well as sell to that customer means you can continue to hold stock in your stores. But it's also, you know, channels, if you don't have it, how do you easily get it from customers? You can promise them next day delivery when they order in store. Those things will also make a difference to capture that sale.
Mm-hmm. So in the future, when I go to buy some shoes, it will be still a store there.
Look, I think there's always a place for retail. But we're seeing it with shopping centres now. You know, they're becoming more hospitality, more restaurants, cafeterias. It's about an experience. So I think we'll just continue to see that development of that. And we might not see...
It's a bit of more entertainment as well, isn't there? There's cinemas going in there, and you know, those arcades and stuff. So it's, yeah, there's an experience where you can go and spend the time and shop as well, but it's almost like, yeah, shopping is kind of secondary thing for sure.
Yeah. And I think we may see less stores. So instead of being 3 of a brand in a city the size of Tauranga, it might become 2 or even 1, and more destination shopping. Those things will evolve over time. And we just sort of have to, in some sense, we're reliant on the customer dictating what they need and what they want. And our job is to work through and put strategies in place that ensure that we can profitably deliver that for them.
So in terms of staffing, Mark, you know, obviously the traditional retailer has been customer focused, customer centric, people that can talk to people, show the value while they're in store. going e-commerce, it's more probably online chat, communications, and guys at the back doing the distribution centers. So you're not really looking for that interaction skill set anymore. So is that been changing the way you're looking at employment, and is there more opportunities for employment coming because of those different skill sets?
Again, I think it's going to vary by retailer, size of retailer as well, because there's going to be a need to have team members who are multi-skilled, who can do the customer interaction, can pick and pack an order for a customer, can deal with a customer via chat, things like that. So you may get to a place where you have a team member who's selling on your retail floor, and when there's no customers in the store, jumping on a device and answering online queries. So having people that can multitask, I think, are going to become part of the future career of retail. And I think one of the things that we as retailers have to continue to look to do is, how do we give our team members the right technology to be able to do those things, and even to a point, give them the technology that when a customer comes in, we've got access to product information that's more than what a customer can get online. You go into some retailers these days and you feel like you know more about the product than the team member who's serving you, because you've read about it online and they've got 1,000 different SKUs and they can't read up about every SKU. But giving that team member the technology that when you walk in and ask about X widget, that they've got access to all the supplier information, can answer all the questions that you have in a really meaningful way. And that's going to be the continued evolution of retailers, ensuring that our team members have that information at their fingertips to answer those queries.
Mark, I wanted to come back to something you just mentioned at the beginning, and you said that that potentially retail stores will have to rethink how they do the deliveries, right? Like you talked about traditional DC distribution center versus shipping from the different retailers, individual stores. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what do you mean by that shift, or what do you think where the shift is heading?
Look, I'm not sure where the shift is heading, and I think for each business there will be variations depending on the type of product, the cost to ship, how quickly the product turns. But if you take fashion, for instance, with wide size width, aging stock, the more that you can have all of your stock in the business, if you've got multi-retail stores available to all your customers, whether they're shopping in store A or online, will allow your stock to continue to turn. And it'll also, I suppose the other reason I see retail stores doing more of this work is, again, it's about, to open a retail store, at the start of the day, you have to have X number of team members. Having all of those team members engaged, doing productive work, not just waiting for a customer to come in and be served like the traditional retail model, will allow our retail stores to remain profitable. And the challenge with the conversation around retail stores just becoming showrooms is, you sit there from a management perspective and go, are we actually making enough money out of the store to cover the costs? And it's hard to tell. Where if you can attribute those sales to the store, you can have those team members being productive as well as available to a customer that walks in. All of those things will give you a place that you can continue to keep that retail store open.
Gotcha. That reminds me, there's already, like in the IT world, that's quite common, right? Like you could go say PB Tech or some of the other stores, and you go and say, okay, which store, there's X amount which are available in stock, and then you can go into like which store is it in, and you can then go in the store and say, send it from this store, or click and collect from that store, right? So it's really becoming detailed. So another question I wanted to jump in is like the other side to it, which is your suppliers. We had this fun conversation on Sunday via text messages where I asked you if Kmart had gone bankrupt. I don't know, Tony and Valerie, if you've recently been to Kmart, but we walked into Kmart in Bethlehem on Sunday to buy a product, and all the shelves were empty. Like I'm not kidding you, about 70% of the shelves were empty, saying temporarily not available. And I walked out of the store sending Mark a message saying, hey Mark, did Kmart go bankrupt or into liquidation or something? But there is no stock. So talk to us through, like, what's the supply chain been looking like since COVID-19? Like, what's the key drivers and focuses you guys have?
I think a couple of things to that. COVID-19 obviously hit China first, and we saw the extension of the traditional Chinese New Year shutdown being China's lockdown for COVID. So there was real pressure on delayed stock into globally out of China. And then as China was getting back to business and we were all starting to put a place into where our orders were, we then suddenly went into lockdown in New Zealand. And part of that lockdown, there was two parts to it. We didn't know what sales would do as retailers. We also didn't have the ability to bring stock into our businesses. And there was potentially considerable costs of stock sitting on wharfs, sitting in our freight forwarders, accruing cost, and obviously we were all worried about cost. So a lot of retailers did the sensible things and put orders on hold or cancelled orders, and we're now trying to understand what the new world is looking like and try and work out what supply we need. Again, depending on your business model and what your lead times are, if you're working 6 months out in advance because you're placing orders on suppliers in China, you're slow to adjust to changes, where if you're, and to be fair, even if you're dealing with a local supplier, they might be ordering stock 6 months in advance from Southeast Asia, and so they don't have the stock available that they've traditionally had. So again, I think it's about partnering with your suppliers, ensuring that you've got good communications, with your suppliers what stock they've got, what access to stock they're going to have. And in some sense, this is what business is about, is, you have to take a bit of a punt and buy stock you think is going to work, but ensure that you've got an ability to clear it if it's not working. And back to kind of that earlier conversation around systems, good systems that show you really early on if something's not working, so you can start clearing it earlier. The worst thing you can do is leave it till the end of the season when it's might be worth a lot less than doing a discount on it today.
So for the consumers, do you think over the next 3 to 4 months we will see a lot of like empty shelves? And like it made me laugh because we all had, Australia kickstarted with like running out of toilet paper, right? And then we all went into the shops and started buying, before lockdown, buying up flour and sugar, and the stores were empty because of the fear that we might run out. Now we go into not so much the supermarkets but into normal shops, and the stock is running out because everyone put their and which makes financial sense. But do you think that will impact the consumer behavior and the customer pathway of getting them back into a store? Because I can't imagine someone like Kmart can't be cheap to be having empty shelves and people coming and saying, oh, I want to buy something, and there's nothing there. Like, that must have some kind of ripple effect on them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it's going to vary retailer to retailer depending on what stock they have in the pipeline, what's causing them to have supply delays. I'm hearing of other retailers who are very much overstocked as well because they've couldn't delay orders, and they might be delaying orders for November or December because that was the first lot of open to buy that they could cancel or reduce. And so they're just trying to work through that. So I think it's going to very much vary retailer to retailer. And I think what consumers, from a bricks and mortar perspective, are going to see is, if there's a retailer like, for instance, Kmart, who have had a run on their stock, they may have to look somewhere else for that stock. And again, having good information online that the consumer doesn't have to spend all day driving around town visiting 20 stores to find what they're looking for, being able to use their device or search it on home to go, is this in stock, is going to become more and more important.
Gotcha. Okay, so I step back from what's going to happen in the future and just reflecting back on the past. So COVID-19 hit, you guys had all to close their doors. Like the rest of the world, I'm assuming your management team had a slight panic in their eyes when it was we're going into lockdown. In regards to like the government support we got through, like the loans you can get and the wage subsidy schemes and like that, how useful was it for you guys as a retailer to get this, and was it actually workable? Like, has it been beneficial for you guys, or a waste of time? Like, how much do you rely on the government support, I would guess?
Look, it was, without getting political and remembering some of this is now with hindsight, for the government, if you step back and look at it from your own business perspective, we were all reacting. None of us, my boss and I sat down one day and said, I think we'll stop planning, because every time we plan something changes, and you just got to get yourself into just being in a position to react to what happens, which is not traditionally how you want to run business, certainly not how we will continue to run business from today. But through COVID, you had to react. And I think the government did the same thing. I would say probably what I would put is, I think in hindsight, it would have been good for the government to work a bit closer with some industry bodies like the Retail Association from our perspective, and understand what we needed more and what were the key things that were going to support business on a day-to-day basis. I think the wage subsidy was needed, particularly when you had a lot of staff who couldn't work at all and had to be at home, and supported a lot of people to remain in employment. And I think if we didn't have the wage subsidy, we'd have seen considerably higher redundancies. I think, though, there were probably some things like loans and even sort of rental areas and even support for commercial landlords that could have been thought about a little bit more. We all needed support from our landlords, but there was not a lot of support coming from the government for landlords. And at the end of the day, there are some big landlords out there, but a lot of these landlords have large mortgages on their property and their homes connected to them as well. So when you kind of step back and look at it from a higher perspective, there were some things that probably needed to be done to support that better. And I think there were some things around the loans that just could have got us into a place where business owners were having to put everything on the line still, and it was like, well, it's really uncertain whether there were some things that could have been done just to give a bit better certainty so that business owners could have accessed those loans, and probably some more certainty around how landlords and retailers could have been able to work together to more successfully support each other, because a landlord doesn't want an empty unit, particularly going into a slow economic time. That's going to be hard to lease. But a retailer can't afford to continue to pay rental when they're not getting any income in. So those are the areas that I think in hindsight could have been looked at better, but it is from a real hindsight perspective.
I really love your answer, because this is on the weekend you weren't at PC, and for the fact that you didn't want to go into politics, that's a very politically correct answer. Love it. So it's just like, I'm pretty sure. No, but I love it. Yeah, totally. I think this is the biggest thing. And I do agree with you that, we all have been reacting. So as business owners, we would go and say, yeah, we need to, like the landlords need to give us free rent or less rent. And, we made all, like, we reacted to what was happening. The government is like a big business, right? They're reacting to what's happening. So apart from, instead of having 10 or 20 employees, they have 5 million people to look after, right? So it's a much bigger entity. So I do agree that, some of the stuff couldn't have been preempted, and hindsight is always a wonderful thing. So next time we have a pandemic hit, we probably might react a little bit differently to some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, it's been 100 years since the last pandemic. Let's all hope that it's another 100 years before the world has to basically be shut down like this.
I've had people.
Oh, sorry.
You go, Valerie.
I was going to ask, so for the business owner like yourself, or the person that is in the retail and in e-commerce, what would be your 3 top tips to give to a person who's, for example, just starting a business? And yeah, what would be your advice? Maybe top 3.
He's got a whole list. That's going to be an hour in itself.
Look, I think understand your customer, understand your market has to be number 1. If you don't understand your customer, you're not going to deliver what they need ultimately. I think having very good insight into your business, into your stock levels and how that's working is going to be even more critical. The more you can have insight into it, the better. And understand your metrics of your business. You know, what do you need to ensure you're profitable? Because then if you're not hitting your metrics, what do you need to do so that you do hit your metrics? And you know, there's lots of people out there who can support you around working out what those are, but every business and every type of product is different. If you're low margin versus high margin versus stock turn, those types of metrics are really key in retail, and I think making sure you understand them and have accuracy around your reporting on them is key. Yeah. And I suppose there is really, you know, while the future's unknown, make sure you are investing in things like e-commerce in the future. You know, a number of retailers have been slow to invest in it, and we've certainly seen a number of retailers globally who have suffered because of that. You know, you need to ensure in part of your business plan that there is room to invest in the future, because it is going to keep changing and the customers are going to keep requiring things that are different, and if you can't invest in that, you know, it's kind of a slow death in some sense.
Do you want me to sum up what you said? So number 1, market. Number 2, systems. Number 3, financial education. And number 4, e-commerce. And I think they're all very good because, you know, we all learned that, yes, we need to understand and make sure that we're listening to our customers. The systems, you know, for the stock, for the accounting side of things, for the teams, for the timesheets, all of that, very valid. You know, financial education, 2 hands up for sure, because I think that's where people are more often than not, unfortunately, lucky. You know, they don't understand profit, loss, balance sheet, you know, the stock turnover and all of that, the financial education indicators. And with e-commerce, I really like this, and I really push it with my clients as well. If they can go online, they have to go online. They must explore that area more than ever right now. And a lot of them have gone online, but I think it's like another, you know, wake up call and say, well, actually, if you can be online, you should be online. And thank you for that, Mark. It's really useful, actually.
Mark, just with the bigger shopping malls, you know, they are trying to produce an experience, obviously to get understand their market, especially the trends overseas with men-only areas and shopping malls with PlayStations and bars and while the women and children shop. But and there's probably a trend for that coming into New Zealand as well. Do you think that is going to work here from the major retailers and the shopping malls to create that whole experience versus, you know, because with an online, it's a very different experience?
I think retailers should control their own destiny a little bit. So yes, I think we'll see all of that, and that'll create destination. But I think each retailer, particularly for small retailers, need to ensure they're creating their own experience and controlling their own experience that customers get. And I think we'll see that in retail stores and retail store design, understanding what your customer wants when they come into your store or your online, and how you deliver that experience for them. I don't think sit there and rely on someone else like a landlord or a mall tenant to provide the experience. You know, and each retailer will need to make a decision on whether they can stand in a standalone CBD store and drag people in, or do they need to be part of that? No, I can see that one. Dragging a certain traffic in, but then they deliver their experience because they're competing against the retailer next door.
Yeah, and again, seen some trends where you know, if you've got an online account with that store, you've got the credentials in the mobile phone, you actually walk into the store, it knows your demographic, it changes the music, it can change the lighting, change the mood, and then you can actually determine, well, everyone in my shop at the moment, 80% of them are between the age of 20 to 30s. So, and you know, it depends on the demographic of who your market is. So it kind of, you can get some technology that really changes that experience too.
And again, Paulina and I were talking about this in the weekend, and you see this trend overseas. You know, people don't like receipts in their wallets anymore. It's just another piece of paper. There's the whole environmental side of printing.
We spoke to Josh
like emailing the receipts, managing
earlier this week.
You've got record of what they purchased. If they bring something back, you know, they don't have to find the receipt from 3 months ago. It's in your system. Again, all of those things are part of that experience you deliver and the confidence that a customer has to purchase of you. If they know they don't have to keep the receipt because you keep it for them, again, they're sitting there, you know, going, hey, this is easy for me. But then again, you can track what customers purchase. You've got a bit of information around that. And, you know, again, traditional marketing channels are getting harder, you know, collecting email and getting their permission to email them and understand when they want to hear from you. You know, they might just want to hear from you every time you get a certain brand back in stock. Again, using that technology will help support your retail environment and grow your sales.
Mark,
And I
how
think,
did you, oh, sorry, you go, Tony.
oh, look, I was just going to say, you know, going from a local retailer versus the e-commerce, having that understanding, Faith, where you can bring it back. You can purchase and you can have that one-to-one conversation face-to-face with a retailer, with a local person, saying, look, this is what I purchased. You know, I want to change it, swap it. There's an issue with it. I think that's where the localization comes through. And then obviously from your perspective, Mark, it's you know, offering those online guarantees in the back end versus what you're purchasing overseas, and God knows what happens after the point of sale.
In some sense, the fundamentals of retail haven't changed in, you know, hundreds of years. It's just using technology and delivering them in different ways. You know, if you can give customer confidence, you can, you know, show the customer that they're valued. You know, the customer being able to walk into your store and say, "Oh, you know, how are those jeans you bought 6 months ago?" You know, those types of things. You know, you've got to get the balance right, so you don't do it in a way that the customer feels like some of these, you know, big brothers watching them type thing. But it's about giving the customer that special feel and know that, you know, you're there. And, you know, for my 20 years of retail,
I would love that. I would love to walk into a, so that, like, Tony, you will, and Mark, you're probably going to roll your eyes now, but there's two things which are really painful for a female when they go shopping. One is makeup, because every 6 to 12 months when you want to rebuy your makeup, they've changed the shades on you, so that you need to match it again. So your 2-second purchase turns into 45 minutes of a consultation. Pain point.
So you say, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said you won't understand it, but it's the truth. And Valerie, you agree with that, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
The other thing, which I found out many years ago, and it just blew my mind, is any underwear company who makes bra sizes, they change the bra size once a year. So you might have been a certain size, you know, this year. When you want to rebuy the same brand, you have to go and try it again because they've changed the sizing. It's apparently a routine thing. So it is really painful. So knowing if I could walk into a shop and they go and say, this is the shade you had last time and this is the matching one to it, then, you know, like I would save myself 45 minutes of a consultation. I'd be like, done, sold. I'll come to you every single time. So the pair of jeans and what did you buy in the past does become really relevant to some of those things, right? Some of those instances.
And 100% agree. And it gets into, you know, more detail. You know, if you can give the customer confidence that buying this new jacket's going to last a month from you, so you know they're not going to have to buy 6 new shirts. Again, by you having that information, or your team having that information at their fingertips and giving them that confidence that, you know, this jacket that they're looking at goes with the rest of the items in their wardrobe. Again, we're kind of getting back to some of that, you know, traditional retail from many years ago where, you know, you didn't know the shop owner. You only bought your shirts from the one shop. He knew what you bought 3 years ago because he remembers you. Technology can solve those challenges for us. And I think that's the all of us as retailers have to continue to find for our customer and for our business model, what of that works and how do we do that in a way. And, again, you see some interesting examples of that internationally of people playing with it.
Mark, can I ask you a question about, sorry, Pauline, just really quickly, about intergenerational behavior change, so to speak? So I would say, like say, I'll take my partner Kyle, and he would love that if he goes to the shop and they'll say, before he opens his mouth, here's your jeans, he'll be very happy,
I think that's not an age thing, that's a male versus female thing.
Or maybe
every male would be happy if you would just hand over a bag and say, thank you for your credit card.
Yeah, he doesn't want to spend any time. We're talking like minus time he wants to spend in the shop, but that's fine. But what about the younger generation? Are they the same? Like say if we're looking 20 to 25, are they the same, or they like variety and they like to, to experiment with their clothes a bit more than us? And I think I really like what Tony was saying about the music. I would love that. And if I walk in the store and Freddie Mercury is singing for me, yes. It's so cool. Anyway, so coming back to intergenerational, and I guess it's coming back to market research and who's your market, who's your demographic, and what their behavior is.
I think you have to be very careful trying to pigeonhole people and pigeonhole groups into age groups, because there'll be someone at X age who acts like someone who's at a younger age. I think it's about understanding your customer and what each group of customer wants, and try not to go, well, I'll pigeonhole and go, I'm targeting a young customer and this is what young customers want. I think it's about understanding your customer and go back again, scratching my brain to university, 25 odd years ago. We were talking about Ford launched the Mustang, and they put a young guy driving it into all the ads, and because that's who they thought were going to buy it, and it ended up being a middle-aged target market who generally bought it. So they changed the guy in the ad to the middle-aged man, and suddenly they stopped buying it. So it's really about understanding your customer, and there were young guys who bought the Mustang. So you just got to try and not pigeonhole people. I think, the market is so diverse and everyone's individual, and we're built up from lots of different facets that makes me unique. So understand why I come to your shop, which will be like a whole lot of other people, and they'll all be different to me, but they're coming for a similar reason, and that's the niche that you're targeting and the value that you're delivering.
Yeah, it's understanding the customer problem, right? Or like the pain point they are trying to solve. It can be aspirational or pain, but like it's really going to say, okay, like you said, the reason, why are they here? There might be all sorts of different age groups, but they're all here for the same things, So some shops might be age related, like Glassons is very much age related, right? Oh God, see, this is how old I am. I don't even know what the other brands are. But then there's stores where it's more around like they want high quality so that they don't have to shop as often, or so I think it really depends on why is the customer coming to you.
But you've got to be really careful not to alienate your customer, because there are shops that target young people who for instance, my wife would be quite happy to go into and buy their basic cardigans. So if you make your shop in a way that alienates her, she's not going to go in there.
And we had this conversation on the weekend, right? We both, Mark's wife and I, love Max Fashion, and she's like, "Oh, I wouldn't go back there because they changed what they were purchasing, and they changed slightly the customer they were looking for, right? Or like maybe they didn't change the customer, but they thought that the customer they had changed what they were looking for, and suddenly the shop became irrelevant to us, and we're no longer shopping there, right? So that's how easily you can lose a customer. But before we head out, I have one more question, Mark, for you, and I'm sure the other two have too. Back to technology, one thing I really find fascinating, and I can't wait for this to happen, but I don't know if it's actually still or if it's already relevant to the retail world, is virtual reality. Have you seen any signs or anything focused? Like, I would love to go into a shop where I don't have to get undressed, where I can just stand in front of the mirror and it shows me how I look like in those clothes. It's like I'm waiting for this to come out. Have you seen any play or any prototypes or anything heading into the retail world?
There are people playing with it, and you're even seeing it, with paint, for instance. You can put a photo of your room online and then click on the colours and things like that. So yes, starting to see some of it, even online, sort of modelling the clothes and you're sort of putting some dimensions in there. And there are people out there playing with that sort of thing. But I think it's very in its infancy, and I'm not a big believer in chasing cutting edge technology for retail. Let the technology guys get it to a place where it adds value for the customer, and then the customer will start talking about it.
I watched, the reason why I've got this vivid in my mind is I watched a video about a movie about 5 or 6 years ago where, it's like a future movie, and they went into the shopping mall, and they went into the shop, and you can see on the big screen, which is like your live version of yourself, and you can just swipe through and see yourself dressed in all those different clothes. And I'm like, that needs to come into our real world. Wayne, I would love shopping there. I hate shopping right now, but that would actually take me to the shop, because I'd be like, I don't even have to get undressed for this. It's pretty awesome.
All in good time, Paulina.
Yeah, it's been 5 years, right?
If it's in Hollywood, it'll come.
Some people enjoy the changing room experience. Everyone's different as well. So
Yeah.
I think it is about just...
Really? Someone enjoys the changing room experience?
I don't think anyone enjoys that. Who are you talking to, Mark?
Yeah, I would love to. Maybe in a shoe shop, but that's as far as it goes. Especially in winter. Who fancies to take the layers off? Anyway.
Just on that, Mark. And you talked about knowing your customer. How have you, in your experience from bricks and mortar to clicks to order, how are you getting that customer information? How are you surveying your clients? How are you actually understanding the customer behavior and the buying patterns? What's your methodologies?
So there's two parts to it. One is get into the data. And if you're not good at analytics, there are definitely people out there who can support you in it and look at trends in your data. That will show things, and the more you move into the e-commerce world, the more you can track everything. People click on this and don't buy it, so you can then start to use technology to try and find out why. But ultimately, in the day, you have to have a conversation with the customer. So you use data to try and craft the question, and then have some conversation with the customer. And it can be as simple as, and I've done this in other retailers, having somebody at the door asking questions. I think the traditional survey monkey sending it out gives you some things, but it doesn't give you that, what was the customer saying, and in what context were they saying that. And so, talking to your customer is really key. And there's lots of opportunities for that, even in the e-commerce world. A customer returning something, contacting you because the item doesn't fit properly for them, or they've got concerns with the item. All those conversations, capturing some of the information around that, allows you to constantly go, oh, I wonder if there's something here that we need to understand better, or hey, didn't think of this. And so I certainly encourage management teams or owners to get out and talk to their customers, pack their online orders. It's amazing. I do it relatively regularly, standing there packing the orders and go, oh, customers are buying this together. I know I had a conversation with an old boss of mine years ago, and he'd worked for one of New Zealand's largest retailers, and we were talking about what people buy with things and the randomness of it. And he was talking about one of the products that sold most together was Coca-Cola and a 4-litre bottle of oil. And it was because the guy who was changing the oil in his car wanted a bottle of Coke to drink the way he did it. And and they increased their sales by putting those two items closer together. So the randomness of things that is out there, and looking for it, using your data, and then having a good conversation with your customer.
Cool. I love some of those points that you pointed out there. One last question, due to time. Do you think the legislation and Fair Trading Act, Consumer Guarantees Act, is keeping up with the e-commerce demand, and is it still viable and relevant to the emerging markets?
I think the answer to that is no. Legislation is always behind. Things change. I think the challenge for all retailers around the legislation is often it's never clear enough to know whether you're doing the right thing or not. And a lot of it talks about things like reasonableness and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, unless someone tests it in court, I think it's again. Fundamentally, you try and do the right thing by the customer. You're always trying to overserve the customer. I believe things like returns, for instance, are a great opportunity to create loyalty with your customer. That type of legislation should never be an issue for you. I fundamentally believe in trying to look after your customer. And if you're sitting there trying to work out what the Consumer Guarantees Act says you should do, you're probably looking at it the wrong way. So put yourself in the customer's shoes and go, what's the right thing for the customer, and ensure your model is set up that you can handle, that you can look after your customer when things go wrong. Because things will go wrong and customers will judge us on how we deal with those. And if we deal with them in a really positive way, they're more likely to come back.
Valerie, not like the conversation I had with the power company yesterday, right? I was doing exactly that. I was educating them on their customer journey and how rubbish it was.
He was telling them how to run the freaking business.
Your
business model is not good enough.
Just the customer experience, and this is exactly it.
It was awesome. Probably wasn't like a 12-year-old teenager on the other end, like,
the poor lady had like 6 words to say in the whole conversation. She hit me in the ring. But I think it is, you're right, Mark. It is when we go to e-commerce, well, we have this already in retail. I think, we've gone through a stage in the e-commerce side of any type of product where people were just buying for the fascination, and there's so much they would forgive. But because e-commerce is now a staple of our day-to-day world, I think we're going back to the fundamentals. It's about the customer journey, the customer experience, even if it goes wrong, like how does your customer left feeling? And I discuss, I talk to this with my clients all the time about every connection you have with your customer, and the digital journey is the same. It's like, how are they feeling when they're left? Are they feeling excited? Are they feeling, they've had the best experience? Or like, what are the values you're showcasing in your journey, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. It's been an hour. I think we could probably talk about this for another hour. So I'm looking forward to seeing you next time over a beer, and we'll have another debate, which won't be as politically correct, probably. So I might need to record some snippets after this. But anyway, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us and giving your experience and knowledge. I know that our members are really valuing the expertise which we bring to the table. Even though you're in Wanstead and Auckland, we're going to forgive you for that, since you're actually at heart a Papamoa boy. So.
I started my retail career at Bayfair Mall in 1997, I would say. So that mall has changed a lot in that time. So certainly I started my retail career in Tauranga as well. So it doesn't mean in Tauranga that you can't conquer the world. So Tauranga is a great place to come from, a great place to do retail, and a great place to start in retail. So certainly there's a lot of things that Tauranga retailers can do to grow, and who knows where they'll end up.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about Tauranga as well is that we are the place most people want to be, right? Like, I think and we've through multiple different panels, we've had this discussion that, in the slow economic times, Tauranga is actually a good place to be because everyone wants to be here. So we're probably way less hit than some other parts of the country or the world, right? Where it hits, like when you think about Queenstown retail, will be suffering really badly right now because they are relying 80% on international tourists and stuff like that. So I think Tauranga is definitely an awesome place to be. I know every time I see you, I have the debate of when are you coming back to Tauranga. So I know that you're going to be back sometime, even if it's just me hassling you. But anyway, Mark, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the expertise you brought to the table, and I know the guys who are watching this will do it too. Please comment below if you guys have any questions for Mark, or any things you think have different views on. Please comment below. We would love to know from you guys where you think retail is heading. But in the meantime, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers,
Thank
everyone.
you,
Thank you.
All right. See you
Very,
later.
very nice to meet you too.
Bye.
Bye.